afternoon and good evening. Thank you all for joining us. On behalf of everyone involved in putting together this webinar series, we want to welcome you to the 2022 Virtual Orchard Meetup series. This is our third meetup of the season. Last year in 2021, we launched a virtual meetup series on honeycrisp production. And this year, our theme is orchard efficiencies, labor, and technology. We've expanded our team to include all of North America instead of just the United States. And our team this year includes Bernadita Salacto from Washington State University, Mario Miranda Sazo from Cornell Cooperative Extension, Daniel Weber from Penn State University, Christy Gregg McGuffin from AMAFRA, and myself, Anna Wallace from Michigan State University Extension. So this webinar is part of a 4-part series. It's the third webinar with webinars on Thursdays every other week. And for each webinar, we've gathered a group of panelists who are experts and leaders in the industry in both labor and technology. This third webinar focuses on grower experiences with new technologies. Our panelists tonight represent growers from each area who are on the forefront of adopting new technologies for orchard management. And for the next hour and a half, we'll begin by hearing a little bit about their experiences. And then we'll use the remainder of the time for open discussion. So we hope you've brought lots of good questions. We'd like to hear about your experiences as well, because we know lots of people are getting involved in this in the industry. So thank you again for joining us. Just a note, the recordings of previous webinars are available online on several of the different extension websites. So they're available on the MSU Kaltura Media Space website. We have a playlist on our Fruit Team website for all of the recordings, and I'll put that in the chat. If you have questions tonight, we would prefer that you put them in the Q&A. If you have questions for our panelists or want to add to the conversation, it's just easier for us to check them off and make sure we get to them all. So if you have questions for the panelists, if you hover near the top or bottom of your screen, you should see a menu bar appear. And if you'll click on the Q&A and put your questions in there, we'd appreciate it. If you have any questions about connecting or Zoom interface, you can put those in the chat and we'll try to respond to you there. So without further ado, tonight, like I said, is our third webinar in our series, and we have 4 guests with us. And so we're going to start with Cody La Riviere from Washington. And Bernadita, did you want to introduce him? And
well, we have a very nice video created by the Good Fruit Grower recently, and so we're gonna use that as an introduction of Cody. And Cody, yes, is working for Washington Fruit and Produce, one of the largest producers of fruit in Washington.
Hi, my name is Cody La Riviere. I work with Washington Fruit. Behind me here we have automation irrigation set up in this farm, as well as monitors and sensors for tree and soil monitoring to decide how we're going to best water our blocks. So the first thing that I want to show is the planner that we use to set up our irrigation. We are currently at Pintail Ranch, so I'll go to that ranch. As you can see, we have all of our blocks grouped together. We have it grouped for drip by variety, so it's easier to run, but we group the blocks so it's just easier to turn on blocks rather than individual blocks at a time. So we're currently at block 11 Cosmic. So for the drips, to set up an irrigation event, I'll go here, click on the block, click on the day, and what we typically do, you can see all 3 blocks there, 6, 5, and 11. So we'll have a start time, our duration, and then our block delay. We do a block delay so it allows the water to go into one block every minute, so that way you're not having all the blocks get hit with a whole bunch of water at once. And so once we set this for a block delay and our duration, then I can go here, click add irrigation event, and then what happens is it'll get registered to this device here, which is connected to a solenoid that will turn the block on at that time, open the valve at that time that we'd like the water to run. Since we've already looked at the automation irrigation, now we're looking at our tree sensors and apple sensors. And so through these, this will help us decide when to do our automation irrigation and do our sets. We set up these sensors in groups of 3. As you can see, we try to pick the best 3 trees that are representative of the block. And so down here you have the dendrometer, and then right here you have an apple sensor. Through these help us drive when we're going to irrigate and how much we will irrigate. So first we look at dendrometer and soil moisture. It's showing early on in the season we want trees to grow, so we will keep them about 80% field capacity, looking at our moisture and our trunk growth throughout the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. So on the app here, currently at the app we're at Pinto Ranch. You can see all of our blocks have monitoring on them. You hit this hamburger button in the bottom right hand corner and you can see all the blocks that are monitored by dendrometers, and we only have 3 blocks of the Cosmics that are monitored by Apple monitors. So we'll go into block 11 Cosmics. In here, looking at our root zone and profile, we can see how much moisture we have in the ground, and that one dictates on how much we water, how often we'll water throughout certain times of the year. Early season, we want to keep about 80% field capacity to allow the trees to grow. Once we hit about first week of June, we want to start deficit irrigating, so we will drop them down and keep them about 60 to 70% in the Cosmics, and the honeys will do a little bit less, probably about 40 to 50% field capacity. And using the soil moisture and the tree growth, the MDS, which shows the maximum daily shrinkage, that allows us to show if we're on the right path with the growth, or if we need to shut down more, not water as much, or water more. So we have 2 sections here, MDS and growth, that show the growth in microns of the trunk throughout the day. For me, these have become important parts in figuring out how we irrigate, how we get our desired average crop size for the fruit at the end of the season through this technology. So having this has, one, changed how we do irrigation sets. We will do shorter, more frequent sets where we used to do longer sets in the past. We're able to monitor trees more closely, showing if they're stressed or not too stressed before they actually show signs of being stressed. And for the fruit monitoring, it's been helpful because we put a fruit monitor on about first, second week of June, and we can gauge where we want that fruit to end up at our harvest date, whether it's beginning of September for honey, beginning to middle of October for Cosmic Crisp. That has made a huge impact affecting our irrigation and how we want these trees to grow.
So Cody, if you are there, do you want to add something, a little detail about the company that you work for?
So yeah, so I work for Washington Fruit out of Yakima. My farms are in Quincy. We have about 10,000 acres of land with apples, cherries, and wine grapes. We're heavy to apples though. For me, I have 560 acres with Honeycrisp, Cosmic Crisp, Fuji, Ambrosia, and Evercrisp. And those are my varieties.
Thank you, Cody.
Sorry, trying to advance to the next slide there. So next on our panel list, we have Justin Finkler from River Ridge in Michigan, Western Michigan here. And so Justin, if you wanted to tell us a little bit about your farm and some of the different technologies that you're investigating, and also just, it sounds like you have set up your business to accommodate a lot of technology in the future. So maybe address that as well.
Yeah, so Justin Finkler, I'm the operations manager here at River Ridge. In 2014, we decided to really go head first into a V-trellis system. Basically planning for future technologies, future efficiencies, any mechanical, any robotic, anything that comes down the line. We're trying to do a real narrow canopy and adopt any technology that we can along the way. So on my slide here, some of the things that we are currently trialing right now on the left-hand screen, the left 2 pictures are a company called Outfield has been doing some drone. The top left is a flight pattern of a drone that we have out. They did some blossom analysis for us. And then the bottom picture is just some actual visual pictures of what they captured. So this is our first year. We're just trialing this. So hopefully being able to get some accurate fruit counts. But again, it looks pretty promising, but they're still on the early side of technology as far as being able to get accurate counts at a fruit size under 40 millimeters. So, but it is a work in progress. The center slide, what you see here, this is our first year. We're looking at some sweet cherries that are 6 years old or so. We're putting rain covers over there. So we've had a heavy investment into the sweet cherry market. Right now we are predominantly apples with about 600 acres in production. Right now we have about 30 acres of sweet cherries, and we are going to be planting 100-acre planting next year. So trying to figure out which system we want to work with on the rain covers. This is a bone system. It seems to work pretty well as far as venting for the wind. So we've been happy with what we've seen so far, but looking forward to utilize this for frost mitigation, rain cracking, obviously, and then hopefully maybe we can produce a better atmosphere for pollination. So really without using this technology, I think you're really limiting yourself on sweet cherry production in Michigan or in the Midwest or East Coast. And then the slide that you see on the right-hand side here is the combination of the DBR vacuum harvester and the automated ag, and they're calling it the Cyclone right now. We've been trialing this machine since its infancy with the DBR guys. So we are really hoping that this can get into some actual production, get some machines out here. You know, we've ran it at night. We've done a lot of the field testing with JJ and Mike and Phil. We are pretty happy with the results. We're confident that it handles the fruit well and can be more efficient than the guys with the ladders. So hopefully we'll be putting that to commercial use here in the next couple of seasons. As Anna said, you know, we have a lot of V-trellis. We have a lot of two-dimensional vertical stuff. So we've really focused on growing our orchards to be very technology adaptive. We've also seen a great benefit when it comes to training H2A workers. So you're bringing new workers in, you know, a busload of guys that have never really had any experience in an orchard. These systems are much easier to train people on because of the uniformity. You know, they don't need to have 5 or 10 years of experience to learn how to prune a tree. We can do it relatively quickly as long as we have enough supervision. You know, we try to be the 10 to 15 guys to one inspector. When we get 40 or 50 guys out in the field working, happens very quickly that they can get away from you if they're not under a pretty good watchful eye. So also we do like these systems because they do lend themselves very well to a piece rate. So we're trying to control our costs per acre. And if we have some workers that are some really good rock stars, you know, we're not opposed to those guys benefiting from that piece rate as well. So focusing on trying to be the employer of choice, giving these guys a chance to make some money and keep our costs down. We have seen some pretty good benefits of some of our V-trellis. I know last year in one of our Fuji blocks, we had guys that picked between 18 and 20 boxes a day per person. So extremely efficient. So we're just starting to fill space and really see the actual full potential on a lot of our blocks.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin. Let's see. So next, Mario, do you want to introduce Bobby?
Yeah, I think so. Bobby, you could share perhaps something about the current trialing that we have with some of the technology that we are testing at your farm this season. Anything that you could share, I think it could be great, because this is the same slide that we had before, but we're not showing some of the things that you have in learning. So if you could share a little bit, that could be great.
Hey, thank you, Mario. Just let me know if you can't hear me. Oh,
Yes, okay.
yeah. We were preparing for this and I just made a list of all the different things and I didn't realize we were doing all this different stuff, but I'm just gonna go down through and talk a little bit about it. Yeah, for us, we're in New York along the South Shore of Lake Ontario, predominantly apple. We do a few small fruits, berries, and everything we do is mostly family, and we've got some really good employees. We focused a while back on tree design. Let's set out, and if we're gonna adopt the best technologies, let's get something that's uniform and we can work with. I would say that has been a really great efficiency grab. It every year, as Justin mentioned, there's more efficiencies and the tasks are simpler and easier to understand. Irrigation, we started trialing Phytech this year, which is probably the same or similar to Cody there. I like that. It's our first year. Definitely gives you a different understanding of what the tree is demanding. I started a second weather station this year on our farm. I've been using NUA with the Cornell, and I started using a Davis station this year just to get another look at things. It has been good. It's been given us a little different perspective. We use NUA mostly for all the different Cornell models with thinning or scab or fire blight, etc. I've become very interested in the methodology of carbohydrate thinning. It's kind of, as you all know, being fruit growers, but to be able to use and develop the technology that Cornell has kind of model is it's been a great learning experience. Some of the technologies Mario mentioned that they're helping us with this summer is through just different vision. Farm Vision is the one with the camera, and you hold it up and you scan the whole tree. The other one we're working with is Vivid Machines out of Canada. They have the camera, just mounts on an ATV and you drive it down the road. That one is coming along. They're having a hard time with data upload. It's not real time, but I think the models they're doing they are accurate. I just think they need to get it to where it's more real time. Getting ready to trial, haven't trialed it yet, but it's all set. Hoping for next week with Outfield Solutions. They're the ones with the drone. They're from the UK, and I don't know if they can count individual fruitlets per se or give you per tree, but it can give you a density based on the data you input to help just firm up the accuracy of crop estimates. So looking forward to checking that out. Moving into some other things of payroll, we use two systems. One is Virtual One, Fresh QC, which is out of Florida. I adopted that through the berry world, and we've since have catered it to our bin apple payroll. We can pay by the piece, we can pay by the hour or hourly plus incentive. You can cost account for blocks, bins, people, etc. It's all on a barcode system. Another very simple payroll system is AgriTrack. That's out of Wayne County. It's we're just looking for something that's for our middle management, just to fill out, to help us faster account for what they did for the day. It's just it's a mobile app software for payroll. It's pretty handy. They are expanding and trying to develop some more crew software. I haven't tried any of that yet, but I think they would be eager to talk to anybody. Kind of back to the fruit. Our team at our packing house, we consistently, this is our 4th or 5th year, we've been doing bitter pit modeling, peel sap analysis for Honeycrisp. Cornell's been a big part of that. And also our team at Lake Ontario Fruit, which is our packing house, they've been a big part of that. I do not know much about how that process works, but I can tell you you should get into peel sap analysis. It can be a game changer when storing Honeycrisp. We also have developed some internal fruit size models just with Excel. We kind of developed it for our mini ESCA, and it's pretty accurate. I think a lot of people do measure, but just encourage y'all to come up with some kind of modeling. Even Excel is just something simple to help better estimate fruit size. Another cool one I like, we got into, sometimes I think it's kind of overlooked, but we got into variable rate nutrition using mapping EC zones, which has been done for years in all sorts of row crops. We purchased a variable rate spreader, and everything from lime, gyp to potassium, all the basic nutrients, we are doing those variable rate. It's been a little bit of a cost savings, but it's been really nice to be able to put that fertilizer exactly where it needs to be within the block. Our soils, Lake Plains, they tend to vary, sometimes 2 or 3 times in 1,000 feet row. Let's see. I'll just go through a few other things and then I'll leave it there for questions. For Semios, they're out of Washington tech company. They have AppRex. We've just been in our 3rd or 4th year for spray records. It allows us to build load sheets. We can track in live time what applicators or supervisors are doing, and helps us keep our records, and I believe it helps keep us organized from day to day because it can get hectic out there. We have tried for pollination, we have tried drones. We hired a company a couple times. There's a couple farms near me still trialing that. It is worth trying. It's just whether you can actually get the ground truth, as some of our other panelists we've talked about, is how can you ground truth all these technologies? And that's one that I'm not sure on our farm and we've been able to prove that it does make a difference. We do some mechanical hedging, pruning to create some efficiencies for our workers. It's not kind of an end all be all, but it is a guide to help our guys. Platforms. Our platforms are from Automated Ag. I do have some older Phil Brown platforms that just to get started, from a long time ago. Platforms have been around our farm for a long time. It's a game changer. The last thing, at least and for not, is I started studying some different chemistries about 5-6 years ago, and I didn't know it when I went to college, but chemistry, I all of a sudden took an interest in it, and that would be just the use of plant growth regulators or different chemistries in the orchard. I think there are some efficiencies if used well. You can save labor, but also add value to your fruit. So that's all I had, and thank you. If there's any questions, appreciate it.
There will be.
Thank you, Bobby. I love the long list that you have. Technology can have such a broad definition, and I think it's nice to acknowledge how many things that you're doing and people are doing in the industry. So yeah, let's hold questions for after the next, our last panelist. So next, Gerb. Christy, do you want to introduce him?
Sure, yeah, no, it's my pleasure to introduce the last panelist. And so Gerb Botton is joining us from Thornbury, Ontario, Canada, and he's the orchard manager with Blue Mountain Fruit Company. So Gerb, I'll leave it to you to introduce your operation and some of the technology.
Thanks, Christy. Yeah, we're in the northernmost growing district of Ontario, about 500 acres of apple orchard, as well as a storage and packing facility. And we market to most of the major retailers in Canada, and also sell some of the larger apples into the States. The technology I want to share is irrigation watermark sensors, our vision system that Vivid Machines has been developing, and a little bit about how we benchmark with our Grifa grading system. So all of our orchards are high density spacing in the row, or our row width is 3.25 meters or 10 foot 8 inches in all the blocks, and we vary the tree spacing depending on the variety and soil type. Everything is irrigated with drip irrigation, and we check what we need to do for irrigation with Irrometer watermarks. So we have different, as you can see on the screen, the green cable with the soil probe on there. We have 4 of them per station, and they're inserted at different depths and distances away from the dripper and the root zone. And then it will measure the pressure in the soil, and we target different pressures throughout the season. So the range is from 0 to 200. Before and the first 6 weeks after bloom, we're targeting around 10 to 30 kilopascals. And then as we get past our cell division stage, we can adjust that water level depending on the fruit size that we're seeing. We might go all the way up to 75 or 80 kilopascals if we got to shut trees down or slow the growth down on a variety like Honeycrisp, where we're going to watch the apple size. Currently, the way that our stations are set up, we have to manually go to the station in the orchard, plug in a data logger. It takes the reading, and then we take it to the computer where we can see a graph of the past readings. We get a reading every hour, or we can just walk up to the station. If you're checking something else in the orchard, there is a display on there that shows the current watermark readout. But Irrometer is moving to a cloud-based system, so that you can see it on your phone in the future. And there's lots of different companies that have this type of system. Once we have these readouts, we schedule our irrigation depending on soil type. So a sandy soil will irrigate shorter intervals or shorter sets more frequently. On our heavier clay soils, we need a longer dripping time to fill the entire root zone, because what we found in the past is on the clay soils, if we drip for a similar amount of time, say 40 minutes, what would work on sand and cover the entire root zone, on clay, it's just saturating one part of that soil. So we're not able to capture all the nutrients in that entire root zone when it's dry. That's most of our irrigation strategy. Everything is also fertigated, so we'll use nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus for the most part. Different forms depending on the soil temperature. And this year I found some like iron chlorosis, so we're gonna test an iron product through the fertigation as well and see if we can balance that out, since our calcium is very, very high in the soils, and where we're seeing this iron deficiency where we can be over 92% of the CEC is calcium. The next technology shares, we've been working with Vivid Machines, which is an Ontario-based company. They have a mounted camera device to count fruit, and in the future, hopefully get accurate fruit size, diseases, nutrients, and notify orchard manager or supervisor of where to check for something. Some of the benefits that I can see from this is getting an accurate crop estimate is the main thing that they're focusing on now. And I think the biggest benefit to growers currently, just knowing the volume and size of apples for your storage needs, because it's not just how many apples there are, it's the size of apples that determines how many bushels you're going to have or how many bins you need to fill. Then we know how much storage space we're going to need, we know how much we can rent out, and we know how much we might need to purchase from other growers to fill our retail orders. After apples are in storage, we have to sell them, but if we can accurately forecast, this is one of the main asks from our retailers here in Canada, is give us an accurate forecast of the size ranges we're going to get and how many bushels of everything we're going to get throughout the season, and then they can plan ads and sales volumes accordingly. Early on in the season, they're very accurate currently with their bloom counts, and they're working on their early season, like 5 millimeter plus fruit counts. It's not there yet. Last year, we were within 10% of the actual amount of apples we picked out of a block. So the way we did that is we mark each bin that's coming out of every single block. We stuck that into storage with bin tags on it. Once we sorted that fruit through the grading machine, we counted, or the grading machine counted exactly how many fruit came out of that block. Vivid Machines shared their information with me with what they thought the estimate was going to be. And after that, I told them the actual fruit count. So I think that's how we're going to continue to benchmark in the future. If I'm testing products, testing vision systems, looking at different nutrient levels in the soil, as long as I can do that on a block by block basis, we can then run that through the sorting machine and see how that affects the payout per acre. You know, how did it affect yield? How did it affect quality? And were the forecasts accurate? And then I think one of the big things, which I didn't even know was possible yet, is variable rate application with an orchard spreader. So Bobby, I'd love to know what kind of manufacturer you've got that can do that, because I've been looking around for years trying to get a variable rate spreader in the orchard. Yeah, whenever there's questions.
Thank you, Gerb. Yeah, so thank you all for the introduction and explaining all the details of what you've been trying. And one thing that I wanted to ask you, all of you, and because it seems to me that we have two goals here. One is to do a more precise management of our production. For example, using the irrigation technology or precision systems. But one other big goal is to be more labor efficiency. So thinking about those two main goals, can you mention what has made the biggest impact in terms of operation and doing things more efficiently, and the ones that have improved more your the health or the quality of your food? We can go around. Maybe we can start the other way around now. We can start with Gerb.
And while you're thinking about your answer,
Yeah.
I'll just mention quickly that I'm putting the link to the recordings in the chat. A couple people had asked about that. And someone said that the video was lagging. So we'll put the link to the video in the chat as well so that you can access that. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's the most useful piece of technology? And that's probably an Excel spreadsheet right now. And hopefully that's going to change in the future. But gathering data year over year, we've been, I've been measuring fruit myself since 2013, every week and every single block, and charting it in Excel, seeing where those growth curves are. If we're starting to dip down, we've saved 2 seasons already where, you know, fruit size was starting to drop, and we can then make a management decision to say, let's go in and hand thin more, or let's add some potassium into the irrigation system, try to get that fruit size up that way. You know what, the weeds are getting a little bit out of hand, so maybe that's sucking the nutrients out of the soil. So you need data, and you need year over year consistent ways to measure it. Like once you make that method, stick with it and gather the same data year over year so that you can compare your results. So fruit size, fruit counts, irrigation data, even things like leaf sampling, soil sampling. Mario would probably love if I got into some SAP analysis. So I think things like that are what makes the difference. And moving forward with some vision systems in the orchard, we can just make quicker decisions. Okay, if we've got I don't know, talking in miles here, if we've got a half-mile long block, and it's separated into 3 sections, maybe you only need to hand thin the 1.5 sections of that, leave the rest alone, and put your energy somewhere else where it's going to be more beneficial. So being able to manage those resources, I think, is crucial in being able to get the best quality crop. We've never been, or I mean, sometimes money runs low, but it's never been let's see where we can cut costs. We've got the data, we know what we need to do. So whatever it takes, we have to get that done to achieve our targets, or do everything possible to be able to achieve our targets at the end of the season.
Okay, so I will, if I have to summarize that, it will be the tool that enables you to collect data in a more simple way. And so that would maybe be something like the vision system, if that can provide that data recording in a consistent way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can only get so much by hand. If I count apples in the orchard, we're not counting every single tree. We're taking a very small sample. So being able to manage this down to a tree level where every single tree is counted on a weekly or even a monthly basis is going to give us way more accurate information.
Thank you, Gerb. Bobby, what about you? What do you think have made the biggest impact in terms of fruit quality and efficiency in the production system? And what do you think has made the biggest difference in the sense of labor efficiency?
If you want the biggest, it's probably the tree design, the orchard design. Yeah. Sunlight and airflow, just catered to your climate, whatever that might be, and specific for a variety. Every variety has its own recipe. Strange, but I would say nutrition is nutrition or Mario would like this, just genetics, root stocks, how you can move the nutrients up into the plant. Probably still the number one. I think the mechanics and the everything else, all this other stuff is just to drive working or labor efficiency after that. And I think for anybody starting new, you can just pick an area you're interested in after you've got that foundation built, whether it be platforms or payroll or chemistry. Just start somewhere. Irrigation. We got started in irrigation because I didn't have anything to do when I was 25 years old. So when I joined into the farm, so it doesn't matter. But it's having the right farm setups the first part.
Anna, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you brought up a good point to pick something that you're interested in. And I wonder, while our panelists are talking, if our audience wouldn't chime in the chat. What is your favorite technology that's improved efficiency or labor management on your farm? Like I said, technology can have a really broad definition, and we often jump to the most advanced things, but you guys have brought back very basic things like tree structure, data collection, and things like that. So if you wanted to add in the chat some things that have really stood out on your orchard that have improved efficiency and productivity, we'd like to hear.
The only thing I didn't add, how do you pronounce your name? It's Garby, right? Or
Yeah.
Okay. He mentioned Excel spreadsheet. I think you got to let the dollars drive the whole thing. And so let that be your guide. Whether you've got to buy a computer or buy a server, start a network, get your employees phones, and whatever it is, get tech savvy. That's all.
Thank you, Bobby. Justin, you talked about the vision system too, and you are trying this now. You are in the stage of trying that vision system. Can you talk about what drives that need to have that vision system? If it's focused on the precision management or is more focused on labor efficiency?
Yeah. So kind of the start out for us, kind of what Bobby was saying, was really designing your orchard system first. We really struggled with the decision to go with the V-trellis here in Michigan. I mean, it was completely new. It wasn't like we could do it on the road and, talk to some growers. I mean, we had to, fly across the country and go see some guys, and you see it for a few hours or a few days, and then you come back and try to bring it back home. But, the thing that really made the most difference was the trees per acre, the potential bushels per acre, the potential return per acre. So that was a big driver for us. And then, now we've gotten to see some of the benefits of that, but all of the technology that kind of follows suit behind it, whether it is the vision or accounting, any of these technologies, whatever puts data back into our managers' hands fast enough that they can make a decision. We're out with several people doing these counts and making sure that we are accurate. But if I can fly a drone through and I can have that stuff in their hands without having 10 or 15 people out counting ahead of hand thinners, or knowing what we have in the field before we chemical thin, the timing of making those decisions and having that information is key. One of the things that we haven't mentioned here yet is having the managers that are able to take that technology and trust it, use it, be open-minded to it. We've inherently got people that are afraid of it, or you can prove it to them that they work, but if they don't want to use it, it's kind of dead in the water. So having the right team to pursue the technology and to push through to the goals and make it a reality is key.
Thank you, Justin. I think you touched on a very important point. And before I move to Cody, I do want to follow up on that. So how do you do that with the managers? How you implement new technology and where you find resources or help to do that transition? Do you do it on your own? Do you reach out to extension or?
So yeah, I mean, we do a lot of work with the extension agents. We do travel quite a bit through the IFTA stuff. So we try to get our folks out there and see what's out there. You know, let them have the idea, let them be involved in what we want to bring in for trials. We do a lot of in-house trials. We have a couple of folks that do a lot of data collection for us. You know, and in our slower times of the season, we sit down and really see what we want to focus on for the year and what we want to learn, and you know, try to implement the stuff. So we have a plan of attack kind of before we set out for the year. So, but you know, just trying to keep the people involved in those decisions and what they're interested in. You know, not try to force the thing here, but let's see what drives our managers and what can make the biggest impact. But making them part of the decisions to do those sort of things is a big, you know, gives them some ownership and some drive there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Cody. So now your turn. What has made the biggest impact in terms of efficiency in labor, and what has made the biggest impact in crop health or quality?
So for us, the biggest impact in labor has been that automation irrigation. We can set up irrigation events and still maintain a 40-hour work week, but we can also work outside that 40-hour work week and irrigate early morning, late afternoon. So that's been a big help for us. And then for overall, tree health and fruit quality is the dendrometers and fruit sensors. They've been big in honeys. That's the only place we've been putting them, is honeys and cosmics. So having those, it's been able to you know, show tree stress, fruit growth, and be able to monitor that throughout the season. And if we can maintain the size we want throughout the growing season, not growing them too big or too large, in the end, that'll help us get our packs per bin and bins in the warehouse that we need. So that's been the biggest impact for us. And there's also impact on, there's also the impact on not over underwatering with the soil moisture. So that has helped us out a lot too.
Thank you, Cody.
Bernadita, can I interrupt? We had a question related to what Cody talked about earlier, and I wonder, while you're speaking, if you could address that. How do you decide how many sensors to put in an orchard to measure water stress, and how do you account for different soil type variabilities?
So with Phytech, it's 3 trees per 10 acres. And so if you have a portion of a block where you have, sorry, what was that?
Go ahead.
Oh, if you have a portion of a block where you have weaker trees, they'll put another station there for sensing. So we'll do that, and that helps. I'll also have the guys. I know it's tough to get your fruit size off 3 apples when you're farming, 10, 15 acre blocks. So every couple of weeks, we'll send someone through to measure about 100 apples and take that average and see if that average correlates with those 3 apples. And if it does, we'll leave the sensors. If not, we'll adjust them and make sure that it's hitting the actual average throughout the block. So that's how we do that on the sensors. And for the soil type, I mean, for us, I got a silt sandy loam that doesn't require as much water. And then I also have very rocky caliche ground, which requires a little more. So just knowing your soil type, your root stocks, that plays a big part in it. And you can see with that soil moisture, the real-time data of the water draining through the soil. And so that kind of gives you a chance to hop on irrigation sets quicker rather than, seeing it from trees when they're stressing out. And also with the dendrometers, like I said, it'll show the tree stressing before. So that's been a big impact.
And just to add another follow-up on that, how you measure that big impact? Do you have a number, for example, what you used to have and what you used to do and what you do now different, and what that means in terms of people, and also what that means in terms of fruit quality?
Yeah, so for the fruit sizing, it's been able to help us reach that target fruit size for Honeycrisp specifically, because typically you don't want big honeys. They tend to bitter pit if you have them. So being able to try and get a size 80, try and stay between 72 and 88, that's helped out. And so previously in pack outs, I've been sometimes in honeys getting anywhere from 7 to 9 packs per bin. And since we've implemented this 3 years ago, it's been changing. Last year, I was able to get anywhere from 12 to 16 packs per bin on some runs. So that's been huge, just seeing the apple size throughout the year. And then for irrigation, it's we used to irrigate, like I said in the video, just kind of long sets. Now we're doing shorter sets more frequently, which has shown a lot, the tree to have a lot better growth and just look healthier. And it's kind of feeding those feeder roots. We're not getting anything down to the 2 feet. We're getting everything within that top 18 inches of the profile. So, yeah.
Thank you, Cody. One thing that I'm not so sure if it was Justin or that shared in the last meeting, that how do you do the ground truthing? How do you know that actually is working? And I will assume that for example, what you just shared, Cody, is very straightforward, that you see an impact right in the fruit quality that you are getting out of the orchard. But for other type of technology, soil variability, vision system, how do you do that ground truthing, and how you decide that this is worth it for having that in your orchard? Gerb, we can start with you.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit in my talk, but because we also pack apples, and because we have it's currently the most advanced sorting system, so we can track defects, counts, size of every single fruit in an entire block in millimeters. And when we make a change, we do that to one block. Then when we're comparing, for example, our west block of ambrosia to the east block, same orchard, different blocks, we can compare our east and west blocks and say what was the yield in that orchard, what was the payout per bin, what was the total revenue on that acre, which is the important part. It doesn't matter how many bins you grow or how much you're making per bin, it's the total revenue on that acre or hectare that we're worried about. So if we're targeting a certain fruit size, we can say, okay, let's apply this extra plant growth regulator, or let's try applying double the amount of fertilizer to this block this year. And then we can track that after harvest throughout the packing season. Once those blocks have been completely sorted, we can compare that data and see which one did better. But you need to compare apples to apples. So I can't take ambrosia from a block that's 10 miles away from another one with different soil types, different tree growths. They have to be comparable blocks, and you need a big enough data set. You can't do it off of a few trees. I mean, it gives you a good benchmark. When I'm thinning, I might not do the first 3 posts in like a 5-row section just to compare and see what my results are. But when you have bigger data sets to work with, it's going to be more accurate overall.
Thank you. It's like a small research on-farm research. Yeah, good to know that you're doing that.
We're really lucky to have people like Christy in Ontario, but there's definitely not that much extension here. So we have limited help maybe compared to some of our counterparts in the States. Mm-hmm.
I
Justin,
wonder, if Justin could address that a little bit. I know you have people on your farm that are hired specifically to address research and conduct research within your business. And so how do you go about ground truthing the technology that you're using, and whether it's worth continuing or whether it's helping your bottom line?
Yeah, kind of along the same things as Gerb was saying. We've got a team of folks that are out verifying, counting. I mean, working with you, Anna, and the MSU guys, you guys have a little grader that we sometimes send fruit too for trial and data collection. But really, focused on counting what, knowing the numbers on how your results are working versus what you think is working or what's not thinking, or what you're thinking is not working. I mean, actually having true numbers to compare it to. But the other side of that is not to get so overwhelmed in trials that you've got people running circles, trying to just do trials. So, try to focus in an area where you can be effective and in areas that make the most sense for what you're trying to achieve. So we've done a really good job of that the past couple of years. We used to do lots of farm trials and have an assessment or have a thought process of how it worked, but now we're pretty confident. We get out there and we get the data, and we can really convince ourselves that it either worked or it didn't. So, but yeah, it does take a few people to get that stuff collected at the right time of the year. So.
I think
Thank
you
you.
bring up a really good point about making sure your question is clear. We talk about that a lot in science. And when you're trying to solve a problem and ground truth something and do experiments, make sure your question is really clear so you're efficient in collecting data and have the manpower to do it. That was a great answer. I wonder if I could just interject to address a Q&A, a question that came in from Paula. You're right, technology is a super broad term, and we've talked about all kinds of adoption of technology. I want to jump to the second question that you have. Do you trust models that universities develop or that industry provides? And I just want to interject that they don't have to be siloed necessarily. Like several of you have alluded to, we've been working collaboratively between extension and research at academic levels with these companies that are developing technologies to ground truth and make sure that they're accurate. And often it goes the other way too, where students will develop or a lab will develop some kind of technology and then commercialize it. So I think that's a really valuable thing that's happening in the industry, just all of the collaboration. So I wonder if any of you wanted to add to that. How do you choose what models you're using, or maybe what models are you using is really the bigger question.
Can answer that. For our farm, we're using a Davis weather station or Davis weather stations in our area, and we use the RimPro model, which also has fruit thinning, carbohydrate, scab, powdery mildew models, and it's about the only, we don't have access to NUA here, and it's the only one that I really know about, unless you're doing your own calculations on degree days and more in-depth modeling that you have to do yourself.
Cody, you are unmute. You want to share what's your experience with the models here in Washington?
Yeah, so we use a pollen tube model, and that'll help us set up our crop for the year with lime sulfur sprays. We've been using that now for a long time. I've been using it for 5 years since I've been with the company. So it's been a big help for us. And we also use WSU DOS, the decision aid system. So that helps with growing degree days for codling moth, leaf rollers, even sunburn protection. If we have, depending on the size of apple and the heat at that time, if it's going to be hot, if the fruit will be affected by any sunburn. So we follow that stuff pretty closely up here, and all the other area managers around here use it, and it's been a big help for us. And so that's what we use.
Thank you, Cody.
Bobby, I wonder if you might address that just really quickly, because you're the one that brought up the Cornell models that you use on your farm. What kind of models are you using?
We use NUA, which is hosted through Cornell for all the carbohydrate models. Growing degree days. MaloSim is an application that was developed not too long ago. That we use that for thinning also. Pollyanna she's now with Valent. She did a lot of work with that over the years. We do check some of the, Cornell has an irrigation model. We use that from time to time. It's a very good benchmark. It's very simple. It's not very complex. it's a good starting point. The only thing I would add to modeling is you have to have a history of experience to put it in a good memory or a good data set behind it, and then you can build off of that. I feel like these models need a disclaimer, and they probably have one in some place or the other. But a good farmer with a model to support that experience is the best way. I'll try to think if there's any other ones, but that's about it. Malison's pretty cool. If anybody wants to check it out.
You
So-
mentioned a disclaimer, and I think as extension agents, we tend to always give the disclaimer that they're just models, they're just guidelines, but pay attention to the specific conditions on your farm and don't just live by the model to the end. So yeah, use common sense as well.
Yeah, and I wonder if any of you would like to share, now that, of course, we selected you specifically because we think that you represent an area and also maybe more advanced in your area in terms of implementing technology. Have you ever tried something recently that you evaluated and you think actually it doesn't work that well? Can you share any of that, any experience that you had?
Did you say that doesn't work?
Yes.
Okay.
I can go on stuff that we've tried that hasn't worked. So we've done some fruit imagery or imaging through the farm. So AFS and then another company, I forget that. It's tough when they drive through the rows and try and take pictures of the fruit because they'll get fruit from the other trees because we have all bee trellis systems. So it's able to capture the fruit on the other side of the row and not the fruit on that tree. So I think it's still stuff that's in the works, but for us, it's been tougher because we have people go through and count to get our crop load down, but trying to do the imaging has been something that would speed that up, but we haven't seen too much success with it.
All right.
I remember, it was probably 10 plus years ago, we tried spraying with, it was like a LiDAR system or something, and it would turn the sprayer nozzles on and off. And that did not work very well. All we do now is we just have rate controllers, and that has brought on some efficiencies to improve accuracy. But, I was recently asked by somebody in the equipment world, like, do you think that the variable rate spraying will come back? And I don't know. I just thought of that. It's been a long time, but the last one we tried with the eyes in the front, it didn't work.
I guess mine would be about similar to Bobby, except I don't know if anyone was on the IFTA tour that came to our farm, but the big over the row 3-row sprayer, that recycled spray, if anyone wants to buy it, it's for sale. It just doesn't move because it's blown a PLC panel for about 3 times now, and we can't justify replacing a prototype panel that's not supported anymore. So we've moved to still the same company, but HSS 3-row sprayers and single-row sprayers in the tougher spots. But I would say we're always trying new equipment, but when you buy a prototype, you have to expect that at some point you got to sell it for parts.
Right. Interesting.
I would say for the future, the pneumatic leaf pruners is still up for a lot of discussion and a lot of debate. If we come back here again in a few years, that may be one that will not have worked, or maybe it will improve. So leave it at that.
I think with that one, if nobody buys it and no one uses it, no one will ever have to use it. But as soon as somebody starts, everybody needs it because retailers are going to request. How come not everybody can get 80% fruit color on their apples? So I think at some point it's going to be a necessary evil. But yeah,
Can bring 80% bruises too.
yeah, that's
Some
right.
of my neighbors have found that out.
Yeah, we did a trial and ran it across the packing line. Same thing. It was a good coloring year, so we didn't find that it improved our overall revenue on that block. Yes, we could get more off in the first pick, but the other fruit, we got it off in the second pick and it was fine. It stored well. So the overall revenue was the same. Maybe in a poor coloring year, it might make a difference. And I still have that question out to Mario, and I know that research is going to be done, but leaves put nutrients back into your fruit buds in the fall time. And if you've blown all those leaves off, what happens to that nutrition? So
Good point. I don't know if any of you noticed, I mentioned briefly on hedging, we use it to assist. And I think it's Stuart Tustin from New Zealand, or is it Australia or
New Zealand.
New Zealand? I heard him talk once. He's like, why would you ever take a tree that likes to grow on its own and just cut the head of it off? It kind of made a lot of sense. So we use the hedger as just an assist tool. We don't like to go in and take Fuji trees in half, especially when they set their fruits on terminal buds. But if we are trying to do a kind of short pruning, maybe in year 2 or year 3, we will use it in a Fuji to try and stack the buds as they come out. But once we get into more of a mature setting, we'll look to something more to just better pruning and maybe some apogee and keep the hedger out of those blocks.
Thank you,
One
Bobby.
thing I've learned with all this is the Mother Nature obviously is boss, but the tree is going to do what it wants to do at the end of the day, and we can just help direct it.
Thank you, Bobby. Justin, I saw that you unmute yourself in some point. Were you going to add something to the conversation and maybe share some of your trials that have not worked?
Yeah, so trials that have not worked. We've tried a lot of different equipment to start, a lot of different platforms, a lot of different variations of that sort of thing. And, it's all been a work in progress. I mean, we've definitely got some iron stashed in the fence row that we've scrapped, but, it was all leading up to what we're working with now. So yeah, we have kind of walked away from some of that stuff, but it's more been an improvement than giving up on the technology. And kind of what Cody said on some of these vision systems, they're kind of coming along the way of the platform. They're just getting started here. So I'm sure we're going to get into something here that's going to be extremely useful and make our lives a lot easier when it comes down to seeing and counting what's out there. But I think we're just in our infancy of that technology yet.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. We have only 15 minutes left for our meeting, and I wonder if you could share today, if you think about the technology that you are using today and implementing today, and what remains the most labor intensive in your orchard that you think that you would like to see in the future, an improvement to have more efficient labor use?
I'd like to be the first person to purchase a fruit picking robot for sure. I'd be all over that. But first, it needs to handle the fruit gently, because if we're putting quality fruit on the tree, we got to get quality fruit over the pack line into the customers. I think that's important for the apple industry as a whole, is keep quality up and make sure that we keep our end customers happy with a good quality fruit that was picked in time, stored properly, and moved through the value chain quickly to get to that customer.
Thank you. Cody, what would you say would make the biggest difference in terms of labor efficiency for the future?
I agree with Gerb on that. That would be nice to have the automation picking. We've trialed some of it, but the efficiency is not there. And then the fruit handling needs to improve. We're kind of seeing it already with automation irrigation. That's been helpful. The fruit counting with imaging, that would take away a lot of counters, counting once, twice, 3 times a week. So there's a lot of technology out there and a lot that I think can be improved, but like I said, we're just at the beginning stages of it. So those 3 things right there, I think would make it very beneficial for us.
Bobby.
So outside of a totally computerized robotic world, which I think is kind of the pie in the sky, we're working at our farm to try to eliminate orchard tasks that involve your feet on the ground at any height of the tree. And so that's kind of one of our newest goals. And it's not going to happen this year, but it's just something we're working on. So, and it's something to think about.
Can you explain a little bit further what would be the goal with that?
Well, the goal would be to answer your question is how we can have that efficiency the greatest. And I think that one of the biggest ways is just if we can set the pace. I see Paul Waffers on here. I don't mean he that is one of his terms, but if we can help take the human out of it and having to walk or step, or everybody has a different speed, and if we can set the speed for the employees, it will create some efficiencies.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't understand at the beginning what you meant, so that's why I needed to follow up on that. Justin,
Yeah.
what about you? What would be
another way would be a platform essentially works in the middle or the top of the trees, and then all the groundwork is done with your feet on the ground. And so I was coming at it from where there'd be no more walking, obviously no more ladders, and everything would just be mechanized throughout the orchard. Sorry if I.
No, that's fine. Thank you for the clarification. Much clearer now. And Justin, what would you say would be the biggest impact in terms of labor efficiency for the future?
Yeah, and we kind of agree with all the rest of the guys here. I mean, if we could have a mechanical harvester or a robotic harvester, there's such a demand in that time of the year, but not just for apples. I think we're a long ways from doing anything mechanically with a sweet cherry. We're still doing a lot of blossom thinning by hand. We're still doing a lot of hand thinning. So even after the fact, after all your chemical thinning and your counting, we don't have anything that can do that other than human hands at this point. So anything that can mechanize that area where we need to have, 80 to 140 guys there for 6 or 8 weeks, that's our biggest challenge.
Okay.
I have one more thing too that I just thought of was automated tractors. We've done some trials with a company called Fieldin, and they're able to put devices on tractors so you won't need tractor drivers anymore. You could spray, almost 24 hours a day if you really wanted to. You could have one guy man a fleet of 5 or 7 tractors, and so that's something coming into the industry. I haven't personally worked with it, but I know other guys in the company have been using or monitoring it, and so I think that would be a huge help too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder, is there regulations in place so that we can do that in the orchards? Do you know about that?
I do not. I know they have that one sprayer right now. I think it's called Gus. I'm not too sure. It's an automated sprayer that I think they use in California for almonds, but I know that one's kind of been out there, but I'm not too sure.
Okay, Christy and Anna, is there anything that I'm missing that I haven't asked that you would like to ask? Maybe this will be a good time for asking the audience a short poll on the technology that they are using. You want to try that, Anna?
Yeah, we can try the poll to see the people that are still with us. Let me see if I can launch it again. Relaunch poll. So if you would answer the question, we're just curious what people are doing in our audience tonight. So we talked a lot about irrigation, and we're curious how many people are using automation in their irrigation. I guess I should have included an option about I'm thinking about it or I'm testing it instead of keeping it black and white. But for now, how many people are or are not using irrigation automated in their orchard? And then we've got another question in the Q&A about related to tractors. We were just talking about automated tractors, but what about electric tractors? Is anyone looking into electric tractors? I know there are a couple of companies that are developing them, but any of our panelists or participants have any experience with electric tractors?
Apparently not.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no. I've been talking a little bit with a couple of companies that I'm hoping to share with our industry here, but they don't have a presence in Michigan yet. So hopefully in the future.
I know a company in Europe that uses electric platforms, but they can only work in blocks that are close to their barn because they have to charge them every night. So for us, it'd be trailering them to somewhere with electricity to be able to charge them up at the end of the night, unless they have swappable battery packs.
Sounds like a lot of alternative energies. We have to figure out a way to power them and a way to store the power in batteries. And I think a lot of people are working on that in science and research right now too. So hopefully we can catch up fast. Looks like a little more than half people in our audience that answered are not using automation in the irrigation. So I can share that result. I'm not great at this poll. I'm trying to figure out how to do the next one. I'm not sure that I can.
You'll just have to close that one down and then open your next one there, Anna.
I only see an option to do the one question. So I must not have updated it on my end. I apologize about that.
No problem. This was like a last minute trial that we wanted to do here to ask the audience and have more participation to gather information about technology. So we are in 5:24, and I would like to give you the last opportunity to a final message for the growers, if you have one that you haven't said in this last 5 minutes that we have left.
For me, I'd say I think technology is kind of going to start to take over the industry. It's leading that way with labor and limited hours that we're allowed to work. So I think it's going to come into play one way or another. It's just being able to do what best fits your farming practice and your farming style.
Thank you, Cody.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback on Cody there a little bit, but yeah, I think the other side of this technology stuff, I think it's going to open up a new potential worker pool or to get other people involved that are not, 7th and 8th generation farmers. It gives another element to the agricultural business that wasn't there in the past. So I think that can draw some outside interest and expand our labor pool a little bit.
I agree. Bobby?
I think technology is a good representation of change in our industry, change in our world, and it is definitely the hottest thing, the latest thing, and it will continue. We'll see where it goes. It's on pace at the moment. It attracts a lot of investment. It's made our apple industry pretty neat to work in, and I think it might help foster some new people, new generation, which is needed. And yeah, thank you.
Great point, Bobby, about bringing new skills to the ag industry. And Gerb?
Yeah, I would agree with the other panelists. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the labor force changes over the next several years with more technology coming in. I think we're not going to get more help in the orchard. At the same time, we got to keep growing quality fruit. So we just have to continue to find efficiencies and do more with the same or do more with less. And with rising costs, even something like fertilizer, we have to be very wise of how much do we really need to put there to raise that optimal crop or to keep that that ideal, like the highest net profit per acre that we can. With irrigation, don't overwater, don't underwater, but you need a way to measure that and keep it consistent. So I think technology is going to be able to help us both, you know, for labor efficiencies, revenue, and the environment as well.
Thank you, Gerb. And now I'm going to pass it to Anna. It's 2 minutes before the end of the session, so we can close it up and invite you for the next session.
Thanks, Bernadita. And thank you all for joining us tonight. I really enjoyed hearing about all the technologies that you're trying on your farm, and ones that have worked and the ones that haven't and the ones that will try again. So I just want to thank you again and invite all of our guests to join us for our last webinar. It will be in 2 weeks on July 14th, again at 4 or 7 p.m., depending if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast. And this panel will be a specialist panel. So people from mostly academia that are doing research to evaluate new technologies and hopefully give us some new ideas and a crystal ball gazing into the future of technologies for orchard systems. So we hope you'll join us. Thanks and have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Joanna, thank you, everyone.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Thank you.